Welcome to Backstage with Richard Ridge. My guest is one of the entertainment industry's most sought after and beloved stars, appearing in over 200 film, television, and stage productions. He made his stunning Broadway debut in Yasmina Reza's Art, followed by Tevye in Fiddler on the Roof, and as Mark Rothko in John Logan's Red. He has received rave reviews for his work on television, including most recently as director Robert Aldrich in Ryan Murphy's Feud opposite Jessica Lange and Susan Sarandon. His extensive film work includes Raiders of a Lost Ark, Boogie Nights, Chocolat, Frida, Spider-Man 2, and The Da Vinci Code, to name just a few. And he'll reprise his role of villain Dr. Octopus in the upcoming film Spider-Man No Way Home, slated for a December 2021 release. And now this coming Saturday, June 5th at 8 p.m. and Sunday, June 6th at 3 p.m., he will be starring with Dorothy Lyman in her new play, We Have to Hurry, which will be streaming live on Broadway On Demand, with all of the proceeds going to the Actors Fund Home, East and West. Please say hello to my friend, Alfred Molina.
Hello.
It is a date. There's your career all in 12 seconds.
I know. It's kind of it's sort of odd to hear it like that in a way, but it's but it's I'm. It's funny. I was talking with I've been thinking about this recently because I was talking with some students recently, and one of the questions that kept coming up was, what's the secret to a successful career? As if somehow there's like a magic key. And I quoted a wonderful actor who I haven't seen around for a while, who basically said, just say yes to everything. Any job that comes along, say yes, take it. Because every job, no matter how unhappy or dull it might seem, however uninteresting it might seem, every job is another excuse, another reason to exercise your craft. And what happens is after a while, after a certain number of years, if you're still saying yes, you look back and you see this kind of crazy quilt of stuff that you've done. And that's essentially your career. Your career isn't something that you look forward to. Your career is something you look back on. What you look forward to is the unknown. You don't know what's coming up. And I kept trying to encourage them not to think in terms of career, think in terms of just kind of doing the next job, going on to the next job. And but now, after 45 years or something like that, I do look back occasionally because I've got more time on my hands. And what I see is a kind of, I don't see any pattern. I don't see any plan. I don't see any kind of, strategic journey that I've plotted for myself. Well, I just see this crazy quilt. I see this, oh, I did that. Wow. And then I did that. I'm not out of any kind of self-approbation, but just how different stuff was and how lucky I was to kind of get this wonderful sort of mix of, this beautiful grab bag of possibilities.
See, that's what I love. When I was looking at your career, what I was going to put into the intro, I'm like, if I named everything, we'd be here for 4 days, just announcing everything.
You say that like it's a bad thing.
No, it's a fabulous thing. When I look back,
you stay here for 4 days. I've got nothing else to do.
I don't either. So it's like, but I've spoken to stars like Chita Rivera who said the same thing. If you set yourself with a plan, it's never going to work out that way. It's like you said, say yes to everything, work with these great people. Some are better than others. Some are hits, some are flops, but you learn just as much from the misses as you do from the hits. And then when you look back, like you said, you have this quilt of this incredible career that you've put together for yourself.
Yeah. And I think the misses are just as important as the hits. In fact, possibly more so. I mean, I'm sure you've noticed this. You've been talking to actors and people in the theatre for years, but one thing I've noticed, and I noticed it very early on, was that whenever theatre folk get together, and there's always tales from the trenches. There's always like stories about, oh my God, when I did this, or when I worked with so-and-so, when I did that, oh, when I was working at the thing. All the best stories, all the greatest stories, the ones that you remember, the ones that you repeat, the ones that you retell, the ones that we revel in telling, are always about disasters. No great theatre story ever ended with the line, and then we were in a hit. It's always about something terrible happening, or some awful thing that someone said, or some, they're about our travails in the industry. And I think that's really important. That's really telling, because it's the misses, it's the things that didn't quite work. It's the shows that closed in Des Moines, the shows that didn't run. They're the ones. That's where we learn. That's where we build scar tissue, and that's what keeps us going. And I'm rather proud of those. I'm almost as proud of, not from any kind of artistic notion, but I am proud of the misses, because it's those experiences that I think make you as a performer. That's where you learn what you can't do, or what can't be done, or what isn't good, or it's just as important a part of the journey, I would say.
Yeah, no, because Hal Prince told me the same thing. He said, my misses, many of them are more important to me than the hits. Especially you take a musical like Follies, which has become one of the greatest musicals of all time.
Oh yeah, they shat on it.
Yeah, they lost everything on that show, and he still says to this day, it's my I think it's his favorite miss. He told me. I mean, but everybody has these stories, like you said. You learn from all of this stuff, and they become something years later. As you look. First of all, I was going to ask you, how are you and where are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Richie. Thank you for asking. I'm in a little place called La Cañada, which is just outside Pasadena. This is where I live. And I've been here since the last time I ventured into the world, really, was last year, the beginning of 2020. I was doing a play at the Pasadena Playhouse, The Father, Florian Zeller's play. We just managed to complete our run the week before lockdown. And in fact, none of us was expecting it. In fact, we were all due to turn up 10 days later after the closing night to do a kind of charity celebrity event, to raise money for the theatre. So none of us said goodbye. We were all going, see you next week, And then of course everything shut down, and I was at home for the whole time, apart from a couple of months towards the end of the year when I was working, and done a couple of Zoom plays, did some readings, been doing a lot of this, a lot of Zooming. But it's been, and I'm one of the lucky ones. I've been able to use the time as fruitfully as I can, but I'm very mindful of my colleagues and friends in New York who, haven't had as good a year, haven't been as able to, to kind of keep themselves busy or, occupied. And I'm very wary of saying things like, oh yeah, it was fine for me. This year was fine for me, because I know for a lot of people in our business, it was far from that, that's why we've been doing a couple of readings, for the Actors Fund and stuff like that. A lot of people have been doing that, which is absolutely marvelous. Because as our industry has really been hurting, and it's still going on. We've got the news of hopefully opening theaters, but the fact that theaters are open doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to be able to put stuff in there. There are a lot of moving parts to this, but the fact that New York and London, the governing bodies in both those cities have been doing a lot of things to kind of help the industry, help the theatre industry, because London's very much like New York. It's one of the heartbeats of the city, and without it, it's woefully empty.
Because I was going to ask you, now that theater is opening worldwide, like the West End and New York, of course, and Broadway, how diversive and how inclusive do you hope the theater will be when it returns?
Oh, well, I hope I'm praying that all the initiatives, all the moves that we've been making in the last couple of years to create more, more inclusion, more diversity, I hope they carry on and become the norm. I hope at some point we won't have to qualify anything with terms like, diversity and inclusion. I think that's something that we have to strive towards, and the theatre in particular has made great strides in that regard. We've seen some changes, and I hope those changes are permanent. I hope that it becomes de rigueur, if you like, that certain things are just assumed, that we just assume certain things, and we move on, because it would be awful, absolutely awful, if after this year, where we've had a chance to reflect and re-educate and in a sense regain some kind of sense of how theatre should represent the community it operates in, it would be a shame to go back to the way things were and have this year just be some kind of anomaly. That would just be awful.
Beautifully put. I think it's all going to be the way we want it. I really hope so, like you. I mean, well, congratulations on your latest project, which is starring alongside Dorothy Lyman in the live stream of her new play, We Have to Hurry. How excited are you?
It's fantastic. Well, I read it. It got sent to me by a producer friend of mine, Davina Belling, who I've known for many, many years. And she sent me this play explaining that this was the plan, to get, different couples, different, groupings of actors together to read this wonderful little play. And I read it and I just thought, this is like a gem. This is like a little tiny little diamond, this play. It's so very, very, very apropos for the moment, very kind of the moment. And in a way, it's not only embraced the moment existentially, but it's also embraced the moment in terms of how we're doing the play. The play has been tailored exactly for this moment, for to be done on Zoom, to be done in this kind of context, which was the thing that kind of attracted me in a way. I thought this is a bright idea, and that the play is really beautifully written, interesting characters. I related to a great deal of it, and I think most of us do. So it was a sort of no-brainer in that regard, and I haven't done many plays like this over the year. I mean, I've done 2 others, so this is my 3rd, and so I'm not very experienced. I know I have some friends and acquaintances who've been doing these like weekly, like doing tons of these. But I haven't, so I'm excited, and also the material's good. It's not like, oh, we're just doing it, oh, this is weird, this is a fun little novel thing to try. It's actually good material, and I think in any other context the play would stand up if it was done as a stage production. In fact, I think it has been done as a full production. So it's got legs, and I'm very very happy to be to be carrying on the tradition.
Now talk about who you play.
I play Gil, who is a guy who had been a lawyer and has become rather jaded by the business he was in, by the job he had to do, and he wanted to kind of get away from it and somehow find a better, cleaner, more less guilty lifestyle in a way. I mean, he wanted to kind of hit the last third of his life with a clear conscience in a way. And he has this, and he kind of falls for this woman, falls for Margaret, who lives opposite him. They see each other every day from their balconies, from their condo balconies. And it's a sort of, it's a love story, but he is very much the proactive suitor. And he's the one that's kind of saying, come on now, you gotta come out, let's go to the beach, let's take a walk, come on, there's a world out there. And he's refusing to be defeated by COVID and by all the restrictions. He wants to make the best of everything. And Margaret is more timid, slightly feeling less confident about that. She's constantly coming up with reasons why she's not going to do this. She's still, still dealing with the grief of losing her husband. And so they're 2 people that have arrived at a point in their lives where they acknowledge that they've got a lot of baggage. And rather than trying to pretend that they haven't, or trying to ignore it, they're saying, look, here I am, luggage and everything. And Gil's position is that's a good thing. Yeah, there's a wonderful line in the play where he talks about, because they've clearly had sexual relations. And there's a wonderful line in the play when he talks about, when I'm lying next to you, I don't wish you had a younger body. I revel in your age. I revel in everything about your body. He says something wonderful like, your body carries your history. And that's what I'm interested in. And I think that's a kind of beautiful notion. But it's also in the context of this couple and the age they're at, it's really sexy. Yeah. I think there's something really sexy about that. It's not just thoughtful and romantic and loving and kind. It's sexy, because what it's about people accepting who they are, what they are, for the time that they've got left. And that's a really positive message, I think.
It's a wonderful play. I read the play, and I said, you get to play with Dorothy Lyman, the playwright, who I've loved.
I know. So I better get it right.
So let's talk about what have rehearsals been like. You have a wonderful director, Patricia Vanstone, who has done a lot of these Zoom and StreamYard plays, whatever else. So what have rehearsals been like for you so far?
Well, I actually can't answer that yet, because we don't actually start rehearsals until later on today.
Oh, I like that. Okay.
Yeah. Today, I think had it not been Memorial Day weekend, I think we would have started yesterday. But our first rehearsal is today.
See, I love this. You do what you do. Dorothy does what she does. I mean, you come together. Patricia sort of puts the two of you together, and then you do this beautiful play. I mean, this is the new now, but it's going to be so great for you.
Yeah, and it's what's really fun about Zoom, and what has been interesting about it, is that it feels like a reading.
Yeah.
And you prepare for it, you acquaint yourself with the script so you can be reading and looking and stuff. You're engaged with the other actors, but there's no real sense of an audience being there. It's a bit like we're having a little script conference and we're reading the play. But the truth is there is an audience there. So there's a certain degree of stage management involved, a certain degree. There are some production values that need to be addressed. Like I had a little technical rehearsal yesterday with our stage management team to make sure that, that they gave me this kind of slightly blurred background. So we're all neutral. I didn't know how to do that. So I learned how to do it. I love it now. It makes my room look a lot more interesting than it really is.
Because I was going to say, you look fabulous where you are.
Well, I think this is very flat. I mean, I'm looking at it now. It's very flattering.
Yes.
But it is a. I'll be curious to see when all things get back to normal, whether we will still be Zooming creatively in some way. I've got a feeling that we're not going to be as shocked by the notion of having a Zoom read through for a play that's about to go into production if certain elements of the production can't be in the same room. Like, you've got an actor in London and an actor in New York. You've got the directors on his or her way back from somewhere else. The production team are in New York, all that kind of. Suddenly we could have a first formal read through via Zoom, and I don't think necessarily the play would be harmed in any way.
Oh, I agree with you fully on this. I think this is going to be a part of how everything is put together now. Yeah. Seriously, like you said.
I recently asked a film producer that I know, I said, well, how do you think things are going to be like when we get back to normal? And the first thing out of their mouth was, well, we won't be flying writers in from across the world just for a pitch. Because the usual thing was you fly someone in, they'd pitch, they'd stay a couple of days and go, nah, we ain't do that. We ain't doing that anymore.
No, this is going to be the new now. Seriously, this is going to be a part of everybody's world. So keep that background and whatever lighting you have, Alfred, that is sensational. This is your look from now on.
This is my new normal.
This is your new normal. What's also wonderful about this event is all the proceeds are going to the Actors Fund Home, both the one on the East Coast and the West Coast. Tell me what that means to you and what the Actors Fund means to you.
Well, it means a great deal to me. I think the Actors Fund, the fact that it's been around for so long, doing such good work, not just for actors and directors, but anyone working in the theatre, backstage crews, front of house crews, all marketing people, anyone who's connected with theatrical work, with show business, I think, and I think that's fantastic. It's a really important job, because we all know the vicissitudes and the vagaries of our industry. We know how easy it is to kind of fall behind in your rent, how easy it is to end up being, possibly even homeless, particularly this past year, I should say. And I think the work is crucial. And it's not just in terms of celebrating great work, which the Actors Fund also does, which is wonderful, but also celebrating the fact that this work is made by people, by human beings who and we are, we're subject to problems. We can hit hard times. So the Actors Fund is absolutely crucial. And I think if anything that we can do as performers in the process of performing that can enhance the Actors Fund and the work it does has got to be a good thing. And from a purely that's from a purely kind of objective point of view. From a purely personal point of view, my late wife, who suffered over a decade with Alzheimer's, and she was in a home eventually, and without that, she wasn't in one of the Actors Fund homes, I have to hasten to add, but she was in a place where it enabled me to carry on working. And it was important because, one of the tragedies of that particular disease is that very often the whole family goes down that rabbit hole with the person who's got the illness. And it's a very easy thing to happen. So anything that the Actors Fund does in terms of helping people, in terms of providing services, providing support, is absolutely, I think, absolutely essential. And I'd be, I wouldn't, I try never to say no when the Actors Fund comes calling. I try not to say no, because, they're but for fortune,
Well, it's wonderful things that you're doing now with the show you're doing. I mean, they were able to raise some money this year because everybody went to the Actors Fund and there were no benefits really for them to do what their normal fundraising was. But it was stars like you and people that came together to help them raise money that they could help provide money and support to people who needed it. So it means the world to everybody. So thank you, Alfred, for doing that. Seriously.
Oh, you're more than welcome.
Well, something else that's very special about this event is that you're revamping one of the beloved theater rituals, which is for the streaming age, which is the virtual stage door, which I think for a $25 ticket, which is so affordable, people can watch the stream and then they can submit questions to be answered during a live invite-only Q&A post-show with you and Dorothy Lyman. I mean, this is very exciting. I mean, how wonderful is that? You get to meet people.
Yeah, I mean, it's just another example of just how inventive and innovative, Zoom can be in this context. That because one of the things I always really enjoyed about work, particularly working in New York, was doing the Q&As. After doing the after performance thing for half an hour, chatting and meeting with the audience, because it was always for two reasons, really. My facetious reason was people used to say, do you mind doing these things? And I used to say, no, because I've actually been blessed with actually liking the sound of my own voice. That's my facetious reason. But the real reason is that I think it's a great way to get a sense of how you're doing in the play. Yeah. I don't mean personally in terms of, what people like, but how the play's working, or if it is working or not. And it's when you get kind of those unadorned comments and questions from audiences when they, I remember once doing, I can't remember what the play was, but it really opened my eyes to something. One of the audience members said, that moment when you do that thing, why did you do it that way? And I was about to open my mouth and say some kind of sort of generalized comment about how we work, and I suddenly thought, I have absolutely no idea, because that question didn't even occur to me during rehearsal. So there was this little beat in the play that this gentleman, for him, kind of stood out because it didn't seem like it was working as well as it might. So I kind of had to say, you know what, I'm going to have to rethink this, and come back again and see if I get. And then the next night, I kept that in mind and tried something else, and so it was like it contributed to the health and well-being of the production. So I and so the fact that we can still do that, have those Q&As even on Zoom is brilliant.
This is going to be great for this one. This is going to be so much fun because people get dressed up. I know a lot of people who like, oh, we're going to watch Alfred and Dorothy Lyman tonight in a play. We're going to sit and have champagne or a glass of wine.
That's nice. That's nice. Yeah, I got an email from an old friend of mine saying, I got tickets for Sunday.
See, this is like, oh, I have goosebumps just of you saying that. You know, what's also great about this is anybody can purchase a ticket anywhere in the world, and they could all watch you all at the same time in the comfort of their own home. If people can't fly into somewhere, that's got to make you feel great too.
Yeah, and I think it's one, again, it's one of those wonderful innovations, and I hope it sticks. I really do.
Well, your producer has done a beautiful job with this one because they thought outside of the box with all the wonderful things to offer an audience but they would normally get seeing something live. I want to remind our audience again that tickets for the live stream for We Have to Hurry are priced at $25 for the VIP ticket, which features one live stream and the post-show Q&A. And then there's a $15 ticket per household, which is valid for one live stream only. The performances, again, are Saturday, June 5th at 8 p.m. and a Sunday matinee, June 6th. I love that, at 3 p.m. For more information and to purchase...
Just like the real thing.
Like the real thing, go to BroadwayOnDemand.com. I mean, they're such a great organization. I mean, Broadway On Demand has been sending this stuff all around the world. You know, Alfred, I want to go back to the beginning. Growing up, where did your love for the theater begin? And what was your earliest creative outlet?
Well, depending on which family member you talk to, you'll get a different answer. Now, my mother's passed away now, but if she was still here and you asked her, she would have said that I was 9 years old when I first said the fatal words, I want to be an actor. I don't remember saying that, but if I did, I can't imagine for a moment that I had the slightest idea of what I was talking about. I can't imagine that I had any sense of understanding what was involved. I think maybe it was, I don't know, maybe I just had this dream. I do remember watching certain movies and thinking, that's what I want to do. If you asked my drama teacher when I was in high school, Martin Corbett, who was also passed away sadly, but if he was here, if you'd have asked him, he would have said that I was a terrible actor when I was a young teenager, but I was a marvelous show-off, a relentless show-off. Those were his words. So I think at the beginning, there was some kind of unformed energy, some desire, I guess, some kind of sense of wanting to perform in some way. But I don't think at that age I had any real clear understanding. I do remember by the time I got to about 13 or 14, when I was in high school and doing school plays, this particular teacher, Martin Corbett, who was a huge influence on me and a wonderful, wonderful man. He was the first adult who actually took me seriously when I consciously said I wanted to go into the theater. And he basically said, okay, I'll help you in every way. He had been an actor himself. And he said, I'll help you in any way I can, but the minute you drop the ball, I'm washing my hands of you. And I was kind of shocked by that. But it was the best thing he could have said, because it totally galvanized me, because I wanted to show him that I was serious. So there was a little element of like, I want to show you. So he gave me a reading list. He gave me plays to read, movies to see. He gave me all the kind of background stuff that I needed. And then we started doing, I was about 13. We did a production of Taming of the Shrew at school. We did a production of the Caucasian Chalk Circle. We did a double bill of a Molière short play and a Chekhov short play. And I was in my element. I mean, I loved it. The same teacher started a drama club at school, which I joined. In fact, there were three of us that became professional actors out of that little group in my school. And it was, I felt like I was in this warm bath that I never wanted to get out of, and then it was just, I was just literally, to continue the metaphor, I was literally treading water until I was old enough to go to drama school. So there was no question that it was going to be what I wanted to do. And when I explained this once to a journalist, they said, "Oh, that seems to betray a real focus, a real kind of single-mindedness on your part." And I said, "Yeah, maybe, but it also might have betrayed a complete lack of imagination because I couldn't think of anything else to do." So I'm not quite sure which way that went, but certainly doing plays at school, and things like little moments like we were doing Caucasian Chalk Circle, and one of my fellow actors in the play missed his entrance, and we're all waiting for him to come on, and it was getting rather awkward. So I repeated his cue line. Nothing happened. And then, I don't know why, but then for some reason, I just stepped through the fourth wall and looked at the audience and said something like, "I'm terribly sorry. This is really, it shouldn't be happening like this." But it got a laugh. Yeah. And that laugh went through me like some kind of electric shock. And I just suddenly thought, "Oh yeah, this will be my drug of choice. This is what's going to get me going. This is what's going to keep me going through the rest of my life." And I can remember that moment, Richie, and it was a real, it was a physical moment. It wasn't some intellectual thing where, I found my muse, nothing like that. It was a real visceral, physical, like something hit me. And I was like,
you had that connection with an audience. You threw something, they threw it back to you, and you got hit by that.
Yeah, totally right.
Well, I want to say, you have this astounding career. I mean, we'd sit here, like I said, for 4 days to go through everything, but I want to pick a few highlights from stage, film, and television. Just tell me what comes to mind, a fun story or a great memory, okay? So,
all right, you ask me a question.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you some questions. So, your first role that you rose to prominence was in the West End for playing Judd Fry in that gorgeous production of Rodgers and Hammerstein's Oklahoma. What did that role and that show mean to you?
Well, it was the first time I'd ever done a musical. Yeah. Apart from a production of Beggar's Opera at drama school, certainly my first professional job doing a musical, and it was a baptism by fire in a way, because it was very much a first for a lot of people. It was Cameron McIntosh's first production as an independent producer. And I remember when I auditioned, Jamie Hammerstein, the late Jamie Hammerstein, directed the production. And obviously, he knew this piece of work absolutely back to front. And I was going through, I'd just done this very kind of agit-proppy play with a very serious theatre group, where we were kind of basically, preparing the world for a socialist revolution. And I went from there, found out that we were pregnant with my daughter, so I had to go and earn some money. And so the revolution's going to have to wait, guys, because I've got to go and buy a crop for my kid. And I was offered I was offered to go to audition for this thing for Oklahoma. And so I did all my research. I watched the movie. I read everything I could about the musical. I read everything I could about Rodgers and Hammerstein. I really tried to, be prepared. And at the audition, we were working a song and working a scene. I was working with Jamie Hammerstein, and he said, what do you think about Judd Fry? How does he strike you? And in my kind of arrogance, I was so arrogant. I'm so full of myself. I can't believe I said this, but I did. I said something. I said, well, the way I see it, Laurie and the farm owners are the ruling class. And Judd Fry is an example of the proletariat, and he's being crushed by the I gave him this whole Marxist Leninist analysis of, and Jamie, bless his heart, just stood there nodding very patiently, let me finish. He just let me vent. I finally exhausted myself, and he just leant forward and said, "It's a musical comedy."
Well, you had just come from your revolutionary play.
That's right. I just come from, like, burn down the Houses of Parliament, and and I kind of, and what it taught me, he was such a generous man, such a generous man. I mean, he was very patient with me because he had people in the show who were experienced musical theatre artists, John Dietrich and people like that, very, very beautiful voices, great, comfortable and confident on stage. And there I was, this slightly a bit of a fish out of water. All I had was energy on my side, energy, and I could do a good accent, and I could sing in tune.
Okay.
I'm not a great singer, but at least I can hold a tune. So he was very patient with me, and but it was and then we did a 9-month tour, and then I took off to go and do a little movie, and then I came back, and when I came back just in time to open for a 9-month run in the West End, and it was a wonderful experience. It really was wonderful. I learned a great deal.
Yeah, Maria Friedman was in the chorus, right?
That's right. Yeah.
I looked at all the people who were in this. Yeah,
it's incredible, and it was and it was a very, if I remember rightly, it was a very happy company when we were on the road. We had there were little cliques, there always are, but when we all got together, when I remember getting together, and we were having like little parties after the show in someone's apartment or backstage. We were all wonderfully young, and the world was absolutely our oyster, and touring with this huge company, it was a great experience.
Well, then you made your film debut right after that in Raiders of a Lost Ark. Now, being on a set, I mean, your first film, Steven Spielberg, I mean, was this a big pinch me moment? I mean, they don't get any bigger.
It was a bit. Nah, it was a huge pinch me moment because there was, Stephen was already a big star director. Harrison Ford was already a big star movie star. Karen Allen, all the elements were there, and they came to shoot in London essentially because we were cheap. I mean, the British Equity contract at the time didn't include residuals. So when you cast all these actors from England, you just paid them the fee, and that was it. So, the Paramount were, I think, made a nice chunk of change out of that. But we didn't care, we were getting, I got paid. I was doing a small play in London, like the equivalent to off Broadway. I can't even remember what I was earning, but it was like equity basic. And Raiders for 2 weeks paid me £1,000 a week. Now, this was in 1979. £1,000 a week for an actor like me was a fortune. I mean, I was thrilled, and in fact, I've thanked Stephen both privately and publicly for that, because that he wasn't to know this, but we were broke, and a baby on the way, and that movie literally saved my bacon. I mean, it just kept us out of trouble, because we were like thinking, how are we going to cope with this? And that movie just came along, and it was a lifesaver.
That's great.
But I'll tell you a little funny, slightly disconnected story about when I went for the audition to meet Steven Spielberg. He was staying in a very fancy, very swanky hotel in London. So I turned up, and I bought myself a brand new shirt because I wanted to try and impress him. I bought this shirt, but it was a very hot day, and as I was waiting outside his suite, waiting to be summoned, I got the sweats. I started sweating just from nerves. So when I walked into his suite, I looked like my shirt was soaked through. So I was not only really conscious of that, but also kind of shaking hands, and it was, I've never forgotten it.
Well, listen, you were going to the desert anyway in the film, so it was like everybody was sweating through
That's
the
right. That's right. Maybe. Yeah, this is what I'm going to look like in my costume, Mr. Spielberg.
He'll say, "This is what Alfred will look like on screen." This is great. Then you made your Broadway debut opposite Alan Alda, Victor Garber, and Yasmina Reza's Art. Okay, how life-changing was that role and that show for you? Because I remember talking to you all during this, early on in rehearsal, and I was like, wow. Yeah.
Well, I'd come to New York once before that to do a play at the Roundabout, and that was a wonderful experience. And I made some friends there, and I dipped my toe into the kind of New York community, and I have to say, the theater community in New York could not have been more welcoming.
Yeah.
Could not have been more welcoming. They embraced me with open arms, and it made all the difference, because I would argue, this may not apply, I can only speak for myself, but I felt very intimidated when I first started working in New York. It was something that I dreamed about for years and years and years, and suddenly to be there working, walking from the apartment to a dark rehearsal room, and just working every day, just doing that work was just so fantastic. But Art in particular was kind of wonderful, because I'd seen the play in London, and when I heard that it was coming to New York, I said, yeah, I'd love to be considered. Of course I would. And at the very beginning, the very first notion was that the three actors would alternate the roles. The idea was that all three actors would learn all three roles, and then we would do this rotation thing where we would you'd play a role for a week, then you'd change. But that got squashed, because it then got pointed out to us that would cause absolute confusion and when it came to being considered for Tonys. Because you couldn't put all three actors, it would just cause a headache for everyone. So then I said, well, and then I was offered Alan Alda's part, and for some reason I said, you know what, I'd like to stick with Ivan, because that's the part that I've been thinking about. That's the part that I've been preoccupied with, and also I stuck with it because, as in London, I was the actor playing Ivan, and I was, for that audience, the least known actor. Victor and Alan, obviously huge Broadway presences. Same thing in London. Albert Finney and Tom Courtney played their parts, and Ken Stott played my role, and his relationship to those two. So I thought, this seems fitting. It seems fitting that I'll stay with Ivan. But I learned so much. And watching actors like Alan and Victor, you're these actors who make everything look so easy and so relaxed that they're almost not acting. You can't. So I would watch them. Whenever I was off stage and I got the chance, I would watch them from off stage, just watching them, how they did it. Just watch how they do it, and it was it was just fantastic. And of course the play was a big hit, and the truth is, when you're in a hit, New York opens up. It's like, I remember my daughter came over from London to see the play, and she was 19 then, something like that, 18, and we went to a restaurant, and every restaurant we went to, because that's what maitre d's do in New York, they know who's coming in. Every restaurant we went to, they'd go, "Oh, Mr. Molina, nice to see you." So my daughter's kind of going, "Do they know you? Have you been here before? Do they know?" I said, "No, this is just the way it is in New York. The place is, it's like this. Oh, it's like this big flower that just opens up. And we had it was a wonderful, wonderful time. And all my experience, all my time, whenever I've worked in New York, it's been the same. Wonderful, wonderful community.
You're one of my all-time favorite Tevias. I've seen them all. I've seen so many of them, from Zero Mostel on, everybody up until it was the first Broadway show I saw when I was 10 on Broadway, and everyone since. I love that production. I loved your Tevye. How challenging and how glorious is that role to play?
Well, I would argue, again, this is just me talking, I would argue, in my opinion, it's possibly the greatest role ever written for the musical theatre. I would argue. It's up there, definitely up there with Sweeney Todd.
Yeah.
Any of the great roles, the ones that you kind of go, this is a mountain to climb. That's what Tevye is. And I think I've spoken to maybe 3 or 4 actors who have played the role over the years, and we all have one thing in common, which is that we arrived at the role, and we all went, oh, there's no way I'm going to do this. There's no way I can do this. Because musically, it's hard enough. But if you took all the music out of the show, if you take all the music out of the show, it stands up as a piece of drama. The book stands up perfectly well as a piece of drama. So it's not as if, you're kind of doing something where you're, doing some nice, quick dialogue in between great numbers. You've got great numbers, and then these really intense scenes, powerful scenes of loss, of grief, of joy, of rage, of danger, of violence, and then you sing.
Yeah.
And it was the first time, even after having done a few musicals, it suddenly dawned on me how the greatest musicals, and Fiddler surely is one of them, is that when the characters sing, it's because they've reached a point emotionally or where they can do nothing else but sing. Singing is all that's left to them somehow in order to express themselves. And when I kept that in mind, shifting from dialogue to song became a lot less of a challenge. I mean, it became a lot less of an obstacle. I realized, I understand how to do this now, or I understand better. But it doesn't. I don't think of myself as a musical theatre performer because I haven't done enough of it, and I'm really aware of just what hard work it is. I mean, it's physically hard work, emotionally hard work. I remember going backstage to go to visit Nathan Lane when he was doing The Producers, and I don't know how far he was into the run. A few months. It wasn't deep, certainly within his first year. And actually Victor and I went to see the play together, and we went backstage to say hello. And I've never seen an actor look so tired. Nathan, I mean, and understandably so. That show, my God. I mean, that, I at one point I was approached about doing The Producers in London, and I couldn't do it, because I was otherwise booked. But even if I'd been free, I don't think I would have done it. Not because I didn't love the play. I love the show, and but that was an Everest and a half. I actually don't think I would have had it in me to do it.
Yeah. Well, like I said, you did the King Lear of musical theater roles with Tevye, so you've climbed the mountain.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you said the King Lear, because the last time I said that to someone, I actually made the same comparison. And when an actor says something like that, it always sounds terribly pretentious.
No, but I mean,
I think Tevye was my King Lear. No, but the truth is, it's a huge mountain. It's a big, big thing.
Yeah. Ethel Merman said the same thing about Mama Rose. There are certain roles that are just as powerful as, the biggest Shakespearean roles, because not only do you act these great dialogue scenes, like you said, you've got to sing these incredible songs, and the emotion just changed during the show. But like I said, you were one of my all-time favorite Tevyes. I remember that production so beautifully.
Oh, thank you, Richard.
Well, listen, then you took on the role of Mark Rothko in John Logan's incredible Red. I mean, you were so brilliant in that. Tell me what that role meant, you living in his skin and living in that play, first with Eddie Redmayne, and then revisiting it again when you did it with who did you go back to the show
well,
with?
I did it three,
right?
Yeah, I did it 3 times altogether. 2009 was the original production at the Donmar with Eddie Redmayne,
Okay.
and we buy. I think it was Ben Brantley was the critic at the New York Times at the time, and he used to do this kind of periodical thing where he would come to London and watch a whole bunch of shows
Yeah.
and do a kind of roundup review for
Yeah.
the Times. And he did one of those and devoted most of it to our production of Red at the Donmar, gave it a rave review, so much so that we were able to bypass the usual run in the West End before a transfer to we went straight to New York. We went straight to Broadway. So it was like a whirlwind. We weren't, we were thinking, well, if we're a hit at the Donmar, we'll move into the Duchess Theatre, or we'll move into, a bigger theatre in London. Then maybe right. New York. But we went straight there. And that play changed my life in many ways. Certainly it changed a lot of my attitudes towards my own work. It made me rethink every value that I had as an actor, partly because the play demanded it, and it was a big thing to learn. It was just two of us on stage the whole evening carrying everything, and it was challenging. But I remember I was in New York at the time, and I got a call from my agent saying, Michael Grandage is in New York and would love to meet you for a drink. And I said, oh, what's it about? And he said, oh, it's just a social thing. And I thought, oh, it's big. I know why. It's because I'd worked at the Donmar before he took over the plays, and so on and so forth. And also I'd been working with John Logan a few months earlier, and he'd asked me the same thing. Did I have any, what were my memories of the Donmar? But I didn't put two and two together. So I turn up for this drinks thing with Michael Grandage, and we're just chatting away, a little bit of gossip, who's, the usual thing. And then suddenly he starts looking around like, furtively looking around like this. And then he pushes a brown manila envelope across the table towards me. And it's like we're in some bad spy movie. He's looking around, pushing the envelope. And I said, is that what I think it is? And he said, well, it depends what you think it is. I said, it looks like a play. And he went, well, just have a read. And then the penny dropped. That's why he was asking me about, did I enjoy working at Donmar? He was feeling me out to see if I'd be interested in coming back to do it. Anyway, he goes off. He's got a dinner appointment somewhere. And I take my script, and I was staying just round the corner from a lovely little bar just off Columbus Circle. So and it had become my local. So I went in there, hi, and I said, I'd just like, can you put me something? I'd just like a table with a light, because I have to read something. So I get my drink and I sit at the table. I've got a nice comfortable light. I start reading the play, and by page 9, I'm going, oh shit, I've got to do this. I've got to do it. And the feeling, I always tell people, the feeling isn't one of those punching the air moments like, yeah, I found this great play. Yes, it's not that. It's a sinking feeling, because you can feel all your other options just falling away, because none of them make sense in the light of this, and I just went, oh, I've got to do it. And I remember just, thinking, oh, and I finished reading it, then I read it again. I think I read it 3 times that night. And then I phoned my agent and I said, you can't let anyone else get hold of this, because I've got to do this.
Well, you had your Mission Impossible moment with Michael when he was pushing that manila envelope. It was like, so what was it like doing it with Eddie? And then you revisited the role years later with Alfred Enoch. I mean, what was that?
And in between, we brought the production here to LA, and I did it here with Jonathan Groff.
Oh, that's right. That's right. You did it with 3 different. Wow.
Yeah. And the thing is, the beauty of that was that we were changing 50% of the cast.
Yeah.
So it becomes a whole new play. Eddie had his Ken. His
Yep.
Ken was unique. Then I did it with Jonathan, and Jonathan's had a whole other quality to it. And then Alfie, and then of course with Alfie, because Alfie is an actor of color, that added a whole other level. This whole kind of power struggle between the two of them, master, servant, teacher, student, that whole dynamic suddenly had a whole other, element.
Yeah.
Particularly when, even though we weren't talking about blackness in terms of culture or race, but in the play, there are many, many references to the color black.
Yeah.
And even those moments had a kind of frisson, and it just added to this. I mean, the play suddenly grew. It became each new iteration, the play became something new. And I remember when I was doing it in the West End with Alfie, Eddie and his wife came to see the play, and Michael Grandage came backstage, and said, "Do you want to know who's in?" Now, I love to know who's in. I know a lot of actors don't, but I love to know. And if there's nobody in, I make someone up. I learned that trick from Frances Delatour. Frances Delatour told me she when she was doing her very long run in that wonderful play where she played the cellist who's losing her ability. I can't remember the name of the play now. Oh, Duet for One.
Yeah.
You remember Duet for One?
Yes.
She did this interview and she said that great and the good came to see the play, and then when they ran out, she would just make people up.
I love that.
Just to keep things alive. Yeah. So I started doing that as well. Oh yeah, King George is in tonight. Let's go.
Straight from Hamilton. King George comes over.
And every actor that brought every actor I worked with just brought something so brilliant to the play. It was I never tired of it.
This hour is almost over. We have a few more things to talk about, but you had Eddie, you had Jonathan and Alfie. I mean, three brilliant, and like you said, Michael Grandage. I mean, the finest. I mean, just watching your performance again, just absolutely brilliant. I have to ask you about Ryan Murphy's feud. You got to play Robert Aldrich. Of course, the people who don't know, it was about the making of Baby Jane with Joan Crawford and Betty Davis. Okay, you got to work with Jessica Lange and Susan Sarandon. Favorite moment of working with the ladies? What was it for you?
Just being in the same room. Just being in the same room. I mean, of course, as you said, they're wonderful actors, both of them.
Yeah.
Each of them very much in their element in those parts. I mean, they inhabited those roles in a way that was so wonderfully, really organic and authentic. And it was a joy watching them play. And I've always been a little bit in awe of other actors, and it's never quite left me. I mean, I've never felt, to be honest with you, I've never walked into a room and felt I'm absolutely on an equal level with all of these people. I've never felt that. I've always walked in thinking, I need to prove myself. I need to prove that I deserve to be here. I need to earn my place here. It's never left me, and people are often surprised by that, but it's a very real feeling. Not that it's kind of, not that I'm scared or like I'm terrible. It's I want to be as good as this room. I want to be as good as the room. I think that's the best way.
That's why you're so good at what you do. You come in.
But I would watch Susan and Jeff, I would watch them work, and I'd be sitting there, and there were times, and I remember talking about this with Dominic Burgess, the actor who played Victor Bueno.
Yeah.
We, another Brit, and we were just sitting chatting, we were just watching a scene getting set up, and I just said, I'm an actor, but what they're doing is like something else. And he kind of went, I know. They
make it seem effortless. It's Jessica Lange.
That's the thing. And I think that was and I remember when I was very, very young, 1968. So I would have been 15, and we went on a school trip to the National Theatre, which was then at the Old Vic in London, and we went to see a Jacobean tragedy called A Woman Killed with Kindness, and it starred a youngish Anthony Hopkins. Now, this was Anthony's, I think it was one of his early leading roles at the National. I think he'd maybe just done Lion in Winter, maybe, I'm not sure. But he was, he was one of the leading men of the company, but he was, he was a theater actor primarily. He walked on stage, and I just remember kind of going, who's that? Not because he was doing anything outrageous or big or focus pulling. It's just he looked like he just walked off the street. Yeah. He just looked like a regular guy. He wasn't acting. He wasn't giving it all the voice beautifully. He wasn't doing any of that. A lot of other actors were, but he just walked on and just said it. And I just remember going, that's it. That's it. Yeah. That's what I want. That was one of those moments, I want to do it like that.
Alfred, one of my last questions is, you are known to millions of movie fans worldwide for, of course, playing Dr. Octopus in Spider-Man 2. I spoke with Ian McKellen and Patrick Stewart, and I asked them what it was like living in the Marvel world, and they loved it. They loved being dolls and collectible cards and all of this stuff, these stage actors that now have this whole new world. What has it been like for you living in the Marvel world?
Exactly the same. Exactly the same. It's like one of those naughty pleasures. It feels like I feel as if I've stolen the biscuits that have been saved for Sunday, and I've gotten away with it. It's incredible. I mean, when you think about, I think the weirdest thing that happened to me was after Spider-Man 2. The Spider-Man 2 had been out for a good year and a half. It wasn't. It wasn't a brand new movie. I had to go and do a recording for something, a voice recording for something. And when I arrived early, the engineer who was there was very excited to meet me. Oh my God, it's really you. I heard you were coming in. I wanted to say hi. I'm a huge fan. He absolutely, and he was a real kind of Marvel fan. He knew all about the comics. He knew all the characters. He was, absolutely in that, loved everything about it. And I was, he was asking me questions about the movie. And I was talking about it. And then he said, I got something to show you. And I thought, yeah. So he started rolling up his trouser leg. And as he's rolling up, and I'm thinking, where's this going? I mean, he rolls up his trouser leg, and on his calf, a full portrait, tattooed portrait of Doc Ock, but not Doc Ock, of me as Doc Ock, on his calf in full color. And he based it on the famous image of Doc Ock, where he's kind of like looking over his shoulder. And I suddenly thought, what's the social protocol for a moment like this? Do I say, oh, well done, or, oh, you've got my nose?
Love that.
That was the weirdest moment. So I'm staring at this complete stranger's calf, and I'm looking at myself, and I'm kind of going, nice, and I'm thinking, he's gonna have to live with this all his life. But
this is what that world does. But what's very interesting about this, you are bringing a whole new audience to see live theater now, because they know you from film. Same thing happened to Ian and Patrick when they came back to do Waiting for Godot and the plays and stuff. They were like, that you introduced this to a whole new audience, and that must make you feel wonderful.
Yeah, it does. And it is very heartening. I mean, a lovely example of that was when we did Fiddler. I got a message that there was a lady waiting at the stage door who would love to say hello, because she had been a friend of Zero Mostel's and had seen the musical, that had seen the original production. And she would love, and I thought, oh yeah, I'd love to talk to her, So I went downstairs and I met this lady, an elderly lady, and she had a very young child with her who turned out to be her grandson. And I was talking with her about Fiddler, Zero, other productions that she'd seen. And her grandson wanted to talk about Doc Ock. Yeah. And in that moment, I thought, this is perfect. This is like the perfect thing. They're, a grandmother and her grandson, and we're talking about possibly the widest example of endeavor that I could think of. Fiddler and the Marvel world. I mean, I kind of thought I suddenly realized just how blessed I am and how lucky I've been.
That's great. Like I said, we are out of time. I want to remind our audience once again, Alfred will be starring with Dorothy Lyman, streaming live at Broadway On Demand this coming Saturday, June 5th at 8 p.m. and Sunday, June 6th at 3 p.m. In the play. Tickets are available at BroadwayOnDemand.com. Alfred, I have known you since you came to New York at Roundabout. I think it's the first time I originally met you. It's been so great to catch up with you, my friend. I have
likewise, Richie. Thank you, and thanks for inviting me. It's been a lot of fun.
I cannot wait to see you in person when I get to see you in New York. And like I said, everybody, join us Saturday or Sunday for the live stream, and we'll see you all very soon at the theater. Take care, everyone.